we share the screen. There we are. And here we are. Okay. So yesterday, we were talking about a case of a person who wants to jump out of the cab because the meter is accumulating too rapidly because he got stuck in traffic. And the example cited, that's most analogous to this is a case where a person is hired to irrigate a field, and then the water dries up. So the Shulchan Aruch writes that in that case, the person hiring, the employer, is allowed to terminate the contract because you can't help me anymore. Like, in other words, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, but I shouldn't have to pay you for a day's labor since it's neither of our fault. And therefore, you go home, I go home, right? So the argument was, could you say that in this case of the cab, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, but I don't want to have to continue running up the meter, so I'm getting out. And I'll just pay you for what you've driven me up until now. That was the argument. The counter argument to that, from what Rav Sharaga was writing, is that that's not a good analogy, because the reality is the driver can take me to my destination, which is what I had asked him to do, but it's just going to take a little bit longer and it's going to be more expensive than what we had originally anticipated. So it's not like the job can't be done at all when the water dries up from the river and the guy can't irrigate the field anymore today. I can get you to the airport. It's just it's going to take longer. We're going to crawl, and you're going to have to pay more for it. So why should I be penalized just because you don't want to pay the extra money? So Rav Sharaga said that you're not allowed to terminate the cab ride in the middle just because you're stuck in traffic, unless he can let you off at a place where the cab driver can easily pick up another fare. So that's the unless. Okay. So we were in the middle of seeing some of the footnotes, and Rav Sharaga had said, "V'ra'isi l'misha kasav shehefsed hu shel bal hamonit v'tayma b'nimuku imo shanachnu omdim et daito shel hanaseh shelo hirotza liskor et hamonit lizman sheyesh pekakim." And he says that I noticed that there's an opinion which wants to argue that the passenger has a right to terminate the job at any time because he didn't hire a cab driver to sit in traffic with the guy. He hired a cab driver to get him to his destination. So if there's a huge traffic jam, so it's not that wasn't his intention. So, and by the way, I have to say that I think a lot of it will depend on how thick the traffic jam is. There are some traffic jams where you're just not moving at all, like for a half an hour. And there, I think you could make the argument that the passenger has a right to disembark because it's a timing issue too. Well, it's yeah, because I'm not going to make my appointment at this point. And so the whole purpose of my taking a cab has now been defeated, let's say. But the argument that this other opinion was making is that the passenger has a right to terminate because when he hailed the cab, he wasn't expecting there to be traffic, and he would not have hired the cab had he known that there was going to be this huge jam. And so who is the source for this opinion? So the Makor Baruch is Kein Matzanu Laharav Hagon Rav Dinner Shlita Bekovetz Kol Torah Shekasav Kein Zeh Va'ayin Sham Shemitchila Chile Kenal V'Ratza L'Chayev Et HaNosea Kamo Shekasav Rabbeinu Hagon Mechaber Shlita. So originally he wanted to obligate the passenger to complete the drive. V'Harav Shama Shalema V'Harav Shama Shlomo Hanal Ela Deshuv Kasav Al Zed Yesh Lomer Daresh Yesh Umdana Shederach HaOlam Shemazmina Monit Osim kain kidei lahagia lamakom yoter maher. He says this rabbi in this Kol Torah writes, the reason a person hires a cab is to get to a destination more quickly. But if he could get there more quickly by walking instead of taking a cab, I never would have hailed a cab. And therefore it's like an onus. And that neither party had more knowledge than the other, but the employee is at the disadvantage because he's the one who's extracting the money. Because of Sham Shekain Hiskimimo Hagon Rav Nisim Karelitz Shalita. So he says, Venira Levar Hasvara Bazeh. So he says, I would like to explain the logic behind that argument. He says, the passenger was hoping that within 20 minutes, I'll get from let's say one end of Yerushalayim to the other. Okay? He therefore hailed a cab, and Dafka didn't get on a bus because he knew a bus would take 40 minutes instead of 20 minutes. Now that there's traffic and even the cab can't get there within 20 minutes, he says, then it turns out that this unforeseen traffic jam really, since the whole basis of my hailing a more expensive cab was to get there more quickly, that whole objective is now no longer present. V'lo hanoseya. So the doke, he says, so it's not that the passenger is canceling the job, it's the circumstance that's canceling the job. There's the whole premise of the job. And therefore the argument would be, it's only if your original anticipation was that the cab's going to get you there more quickly, and now it turns out that it's not, then you can say, I want to get off. That's according to this opinion. But if you don't care how long it takes to get there, you just wanted the convenience of getting a cab, and now you're realizing that it's going to cost me much more than I had anticipated, that would not be a legitimate basis for canceling the job and getting out in the middle. Okay, so we will I guess that's the name of the sefer, Shama Shlomo. I'm going to skip the stuff in the brackets. Ela dechol zeh kasavnu rak liyashev mashakasav harav hagon rav dinner shlita. V'hainu tiyesh makom l'potrim haya davka b'matzav kazeh shu sachar et hamoni davka lahagi l'makom shetzorach toch zman mesuyam. He says, but that's to explain this opinion of this Rav Dinner, who said that the whole reason you could get out is because the whole reason you hired the cab was to get there in a shorter amount of time. You were hoping to get there within 20 minutes. And then the mishap is the thing that throws a wrench in the whole basis for the hire to begin with, and therefore you have a right to get out. But it's very difficult to rely on this heter, practically speaking. It's not always the case that the reason why a guy hails a cab is because he wants to get there more quickly. It's because a lot of people take cabs because of the convenience, because of the ease, door-to-door service. Not everyone is so hung up on getting there within a certain time frame, right? And could make a legitimate argument that had I known there would be traffic, I never would have taken the cab. Ki im barechev ragil ya'acharu. Uchemeduma deruba de inshi shenosim b'derech klal berechev o b'monit yamshichu lasot kein gam im ze yoter maher lolechet beregel. I think that perhaps a majority of people, even if they know that it's quicker to walk, would still want to take a car to get to certain destinations. Now, again, it all depends on the individual. Let's say a person's older and they've got to get from, I don't know, they've got to get from Katamon to the Kotel. All right. And it would take them 45 minutes, an hour maybe, to walk if they were to walk. And now that there's traffic, it's going to take the same amount of time to get from Katamon to the Kotel. Does that mean that a person would have walked had they known? It depends. How old are they? How healthy are they? How hale and hearty are they, right? To make that trek. How hot is it outside? Maybe so it's not so easy to make that kind of argument. Not everyone is used to walking those long lengths by foot. And even if a person says this is taking too long, I want to get off. It's already. He says, how do you know that that is a legitimate or a truthful claim? He says because maybe the whole reason is because he's schwitzing because of he's looking at the meter and it's now up to 100 shekels. But that's not enough of a reason to have him quit in the middle of the hire. He says, and therefore it's not so simple to make that kind of assumption that had he known that it would take this long, he never would have hired the cab, or had he known that it would take this long, he would have walked. He says, because many people would still go in a car, even knowing that it would take this long. He says, and therefore, that a person should have to perhaps go the entire fare if he hired the cab to take him to the Kotel. But I think there's a reason to exempt the passenger for another reason, and that is because Rav Bloy in his Pischei Choshen writes another argument. That if it's a city fare, meaning the guy's getting from one part of Yerushalayim to another, for example, and it goes according to a meter, even if he says, take me to the Kotel, he says a person has a right to interrupt a fare, according to Rav Bloy, because I'm paying you by the meter. I'm not paying you for the job. I'm paying you for the amount that it says on the meter. So, the meter starts, it starts, I think, at 20 shekels or something like that, right? So even if we only go a block, you're making money and I'm paying you a fare. So that's the way cab driving works when you're in the city, is that you pay according to the amount that's on the meter, not for the fact that you wanted the guy to take you to a certain destination. And therefore, in our case as well, the fact that the passenger said, take me to the Kotel, to this one place, it doesn't obligate him to sit through the ride until he gets to the Kotel. And therefore, he has a right to get off whenever he wants. If he wants to get off, let's say, at Mamila, and not have to go all the way around to get to Shar Yafo, he has a right to do that because he says the traffic is crazy. It's going to take an extra 20 minutes, and I'll get off here. Okay.
Well, Rabbi, the fare is going to be the same. If someone wants to book from Kathmandu to Kotel and that driver knows that's normally 50 shekels, now you're in traffic, you're up to 80 shekels. What is he losing? He's getting his fare. He wants to get out.
You mean if the passenger wants to get out? Well, maybe,
what is the problem if he stops early? Is it on the
well, the issue is that the cab driver says, I picked you up to take you to a certain destination. Perhaps if I would have known you only wanted to go half of that distance, I wouldn't have picked you up. I would have waited for
money. He's
Yeah.
expecting a certain fare, but now you're going in traffic. He's going to get his fare and more, and then get out. He can walk.
Right,
And he's
so-
already. What if he didn't lose anything?
right. But the cab driver is saying that on trafficy days,
He's expecting more.
yeah, I'm expecting to make even more money.
That's a little bit pushy.
Well, it's also the fact.
Well, it's Israeli. What do you want?
Is it also the fact that if he gets to the hotel, you can get a ride from the hotel somewhere?
He can probably get a lot of fares if he takes you all the way to the
pickup
Kotel.
premise. The pickup premise is not because, I'll take you here because I know I can get a fare somewhere else. That's not a proper smart.
No, a lot of cab drivers will choose their jobs based on where they can pick up their next fare.
They don't like to come back empty also, right?
Right. So, Amnam Lanias Daiti Yesh Lomar da Pischei Choshen Aridavke Kishmorido Be'emsa Derech Belishum Pekakul Chedoime. But it seems to me that Rav Bloy is talking about a case where a guy is getting off not because of traffic. Shekain derech haschiras lefam shepitom hanosei tzarich laredet me'ez siba shehi. He says because a lot of times a passenger says, "Oish, I realized I have to make a stop. Let me off over here. I got to stop in and talk to someone, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop the ride." Now, a passenger has a right to do that. The haminig b'chei gavna l'shalem rak al ma shehisiu ad l'sham. And therefore, the guy only has to pay what's on the meter at that point. Aval kesherotze laredet keshu be'emsa pekak rak b'gol she'nerotze l'shalem yoter mima shetzipa yesh lomer degam hapischei choshen yoda diyef shulasus kein b'doik. But if the whole reason that he wants to get off is because he doesn't want to pay more because of the traffic situation, maybe Rav Bloy would agree that that's not in itself enough of a reason, since you told the guy that you were going to the kotel and now you want to get off early. That's not enough of a reason to interrupt the ride because you don't want to pay more on the meter. I'm not really convinced. I think that it is legitimate to get off because you say, listen, I'm going to pay you for what I have on the meter. You're making money, and I can walk it from here. And instead of waiting an extra 20 minutes, it'll be faster for me to walk through the Mamila Mall instead of waiting for you to go all the way around whatever that road is, I forget the name. Shar Tzion, to bring me to the entrance by the Kotel, right? What gate is that? Is that the Ashba gate? Yeah. The Dung gate, yeah. Anyway,
It would be different if it was an agreement to pay a flat fee from here to the hotel.
I think it would. I think it would be different. I think it would be different.
Now, can they change it in the middle of the time? Because you know what, Ubers will do that.
Yeah.
If you book an Uber and it says $30, all of a sudden it takes them an extra half hour, your bill is $48.
That makes it,
But a taxi doesn't go full. Flat fee, that's it.
Yeah. So it's really the bottom line is, as long as you're not leaving the driver in the lurch because you're getting off in the middle of nowhere. Okay, that already I can understand that's not, that might be even a breach of halacha, certainly not ethical. If you're telling a guy, let me off over here, the guy has no prospects of other passengers for quite some distance, that already is something that might not be appropriate. But it's usually unlikely that a guy's going to do that, get off in the middle of nowhere. In most cases, wherever someone's getting off in the cab, there's other prospects. You can pick up other fares. It may not be exactly the destination where the driver was hoping to take you and to make extra money, but it is fair for a person to say, it'll be faster for me to walk from this point to get to my destination than to have to sit in the cab. There really shouldn't be any halachic reason why a person shouldn't be able to get out in that kind of situation.
If there's an accident and there's no cars moving through.
Yeah.
Right, you're stuck. But
You're-
you see in New York,
you're
all the
stuck,
time, you see
yeah,
people get out of the cabs all the
Right,
time.
your mamish can't move. And so the guy can't fulfill his contract, right? Right. Okay, so this really is not so clear cut as Rav Sharaga had put it. Obviously, you don't want to exploit your cab driver. And you have to treat your cab driver with ethics and make sure that you treat him right. But there are going to be plenty of situations where you would be allowed to get out of the cab if you feel that it'll be faster for you to do it, to get to your destination some other way. And even if it's a question of expense, you also have a right to say, I wasn't anticipating having to spend a fortune and a half. Okay.
I'm going to the airport. Sometimes it takes Highway 7. And down, time to take 407.
Yeah.
That way you're getting there. Still costs me the same, more money, because he's going to charge you for the 407.
Right. I've had a lot of times where the Uber driver,
Does not have a flow.
he doesn't have a transponder.
It depends on what time of the day. I came home from Calgary, it was late at night, like 1 a.m. And the guy took Highway 7, took just as long. Took
Right.
For 1 and Highway 7.
Right. When there's no traffic,
Yeah, no
it's fine. Okay. So let's just start the next tshuva. Bidin pitur moreh she'eino melamed kiraoi. Firing a teacher who's not doing the job well, who's not doing a good job at teaching. So why should this even be a shaila, right? But what's more important, the maintenance of the teacher, or the fact that the kids have to be educated?
If the teacher's a troublemaker.
What if the teacher
He's
is?
a troublemaker.
What does that even mean?
Means he's saying things about people, he's not doing his job properly, he's being negligent. He doesn't show up some days.
Well, of course, that's grounds for
So what is the
That's
question?
cost.
Just, what is it?
yeah. So let's see
What
what
is
the
the
question is. Yesh bebeit sifreinu moreh shelo mishtaleit al hatalmidim. We have a teacher who has no ability to control his class, right? His students. Ve'ein bekita shum mishtar. V'hatalmidim osim kachol ha'oleh al rucham. There is absolutely no discipline at all in this classroom. The kids do whatever they want. Ha'im mutar li lefater et hamoreh, ve'ha'im ani tzarich l'shalem lo et scharo. Do I have a right to fire the teacher? This is a principal or an administrator asking the shala, can I fire the teacher? He can't maintain decorum in the classroom. And do I have to pay him for his contract if he's not able to control the class? Kids are not learning anything.
What's in the contract?
It's that whole just cause for dismissal and not just cause for dismissal.
That's right.
You can always dismiss somebody, but you have to pay them reasonable notice, so,
Yeah,
it's not
right.
Unless there's cause.
Right.
You know,
And then, of course, the unions
have
get
You
involved.
gotta give them the warning.
When you have
It's
costs, you have
unionized,
to pay out.
There's a whole-
Still have to pay.
whole
I had to-
set of
There's a whole thing in
I had
there,
to
it's supposed to be
fire once at Dartmouth.
the fact
That
that-
was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
We paid him a year.
You paid him the whole year?
We got severance for a year.
1 second. How far into the year did you
No,
fire him?
We finished the year. And then not to rehire after being there for X amount of time.
Then there's this whole concept of.
Because of this, not because, sorry,
Yes.
just because because he couldn't control the class. It wasn't good. So what are you supposed to do? You have the right.
Well,
to-
it depends how much advance notice you gave him. Like if you told him in January, we're not renewing you, I don't know that you would have to pay him a whole severance for another year.
We told him to pay some time. I had to do it. It's awful. Awful experience.
There's also progressive discipline. You're supposed to give a warning and say, if you don't do this.
We're putting this in your file.
Yeah.
The
you
HR,
got 3, 4
HR has a
times.
file on, you have to have proof, you have
Yeah,
to
all
show.
this stuff. And then
It's so funny, someone's terrible, and the onus is on the employer or on the school or shul, whoever to prove that they were.
Unless they,
Money,
you
yeah.
catch them stealing something. in
Right.
which case, oh,
Yeah, Nisht Pasha. Okay, we'll continue Mirza Shem tomorrow.
I guess